Modern science would seem to disagree with an Old Testament understanding of the universe. Here's what an ancient Hebrew conception of the universe would look like. This is the earth, with all of its mountains and seas and people and hyraxes. Up above the earth we can see the sky, with its clouds and birds and other stuff. But then surrounding the earth and the sky is something called the firmament. The earth looks a lot like a big glass snow globe, with the firmament acting as the glass. Up above the firmament, being held back from raining down on us, is water. The waters above, which have been separated from the waters below, so that we can live on earth without drowning. Today, we would call these waters above the sky. But to the ancients, they thought it was just another big ocean being held back by that great big snow globe in the air. The firmament also contains such things as the sun, moon, and stars, which rotated around the earth. Up above the firmament were the heavens, inaccessible to people, and in the highest of heavens was God himself. Holding the heavens in place were their foundations, far beyond the horizon and the farmost reaches of the earth. But beneath the foundations of the heavens lay something else, the underworld. Under the earth was a place of darkness and death. In Hebrew it was called Sheol, and is where the spirits of the departed came to rest in death. Sheol is not the same as hell. Hell is a place of punishment and doesn't turn up on this map. Sheol is the place where everyone goes when they die, not just wicked people. It's not a place of punishment, it's a place of decay. Sheol is surrounded by the great pillars, the foundations of the earth, holding all of creation in place. Going deeper still, beneath the pillars, is more water. These are the waters in the fountains of the great deep, held back since the creation of the universe and separated here below from the waters above the creation. All that is alive and good lives in the great expanse between the waters, called earth, with the exception of God, who is above all. And yet, according to Genesis, it is the Spirit of God himself that separates these waters and breathes life into creation. The Spirit of God dwells in the earth. In the story of the flood, God's Spirit departs from his creation, and the waters above and the waters below are reunited, destroying everything. But his spirit, his breath, his ruach, returns to separate the waters once again and resurrect his creation from death. But what does all of this mean for us? Should we disregard the creation stories because modern science disagrees with them? Or should we disregard modern science because it disagrees with the Bible? Okay, so let's take a quick look at a theological reading versus a scientific reading of the text. We must first recognize the importance of the biblical stories of creation. The theology of creation does not change. It is also important to remember that the Bible is not first and foremost a science textbook. The Bible does contain some scientific references, but the Bible writers are writing from a worldview that was limited to their own cultural understanding of the way the world worked. The creation stories are told in the literary format of Exalted Prose. The other passage in the Bible that is most similar to the style and format of Genesis 1 is John 1, the "In the beginning was the Word" passage. We must read both stories in the same way, through the lens of Exalted Prose. When John 1 says, "In the beginning was the Word," we don't ask, was the word an adjective or a verb? What's the grammar here? Likewise, when Genesis 1 says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth," we should not ask, did he create with evolution or not? What's the science here? Both sets of questions completely miss the points of the narratives. These stories are partially historical, but mainly poetic, and Exalted Prose in the Bible is never intended to be taken only in the literal sense. When studying Exalted Prose and the poetic works of the Bible, we must always look for the deeper theological meaning of what is being presented. The Bible often uses word pictures and imagery to describe things about God and God's relationship with people. Throughout history, God has chosen to reveal himself to people in different ways, but God has always chosen to meet people where they are. In the case of Israel, God chose to reveal himself to them in a way that they would understand, in a way that fit into their understanding of the world. Israel was a part of the ancient Near East, and they looked at the world as ancient Near Easterners would. At the same time, God revealed to them a picture of himself as creator that was different than other ancient Near Eastern ways of thinking, as seen when compared to something such as the Enuma Elish. Here are some key differences between God's self-revelation to Israel and the many other ancient Near Eastern understandings of God. There is one God versus there are many gods. God brought order to chaos without difficulty versus the gods brought order to chaos through fear, murder, and a great struggle. And God created the cosmos out of nothing versus the gods created the cosmos out of leftovers. But there are also some similarities between Genesis 1 and the beliefs of Israel's neighbors. At the end of the first creation story in Genesis 1, the entire cosmos has been set up to be the residence of God. This is similar to other ancient Near Eastern creation myths, including the Enuma Elish, where at the end of the story, a temple is created for the God to dwell in. Genesis 1 portrays the entire cosmos as God's temple. In other ancient Near Eastern creation myths, the creator God reigns over the lesser deities or sons of God and stands over them as the leader of their assembly in the temple. Jewish tradition also believes that God reigns over an assembly of lesser deities or sons of God. These sons of God are also known as angels or servants of God. Did you know that there are other creation stories in the Bible? It's true, they're all over the place, and they're not all the same. But one thing they do have in common is that they all fall under the literary genre of poetry, which is never to be understood in only the literal sense. If we are to take every poetic word of the Genesis creation accounts in their purely literal form, then we must do the same for the many other creation stories in the Bible that are also poetic in nature. For example, what would compel us to read literally the place in Genesis where God creates the woman from the man's rib, while at the same time dismissing the creation account in Job, which says that God used a measuring line or a ruler when he made the earth? Both accounts are equally poetic. There are many creation stories in the Bible, and they are no less important than the ones found in Genesis. In closing, here are some lesser-known examples. Psalm 74. But God is my king from long ago. He brings salvation on the earth. It was you who split open the sea by your power. You broke the heads of the monster in the waters. It was you who crushed the heads of Leviathan, and gave it as food to the creatures of the desert. It was you who opened up springs and streams. You dried up the ever-flowing rivers. The day is yours, and also the night. You established the sun and moon. It was you who set all the boundaries of the earth. You made both summer and winter. Isaiah 51. Was it not you who cut Rahab to pieces, who pierced that monster through? Was it not you who dried up the sea, the waters of the great deep, who made a road in the depths of the sea so that the redeemed might cross over? For I am the Lord your God, who stirs up the sea so that its waves roar. The Lord Almighty is his name. I have put my words in your mouth and covered you with the shadow of my hand. I who set the heavens in place, who laid the foundations of the earth, and who say to Zion, you are my people. Isaiah 40. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, or with the breadth of his hand marked off the heavens? Who has held the dust of the earth in a basket, or weighed the mountains on the scales and the hills in a balance? He sits enthroned above the circle of the earth, and its people are like grasshoppers. He stretches out the heavens like a canopy, and spreads them out like a tent to live in. To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One? Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one, and calls forth each of them by name. Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. Job 38. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Who shut up the sea behind doors when it burst forth from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and wrapped it in thick darkness? When I fixed limits for it and set its doors and bars in place? When I said, this far you may come and no farther. Here is where your proud waves halt. Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? Have you journeyed to the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? Have the gates of death been shown to you? Tell me, if you know all this, what is the way to the abode of light, and where does darkness reside? And Proverbs 3. By wisdom the Lord laid the earth's foundations, by understanding he set the heavens in place. By his knowledge the watery depths were divided, and the clouds let drop the dew.